Hello and welcome. You found the Social Work Podcast. My name's Jonathan Singer, and I'll be your host as we explore all things social work. Hello, podcast listeners. A few months ago, I interviewed a mother and a stepmother, Jennifer and Carol, two women whose book, No One's the Bitch, a 10-step plan for the mother and stepmother relationship, had just been published by Globe Pequot Press. Their book quickly became a bestseller on Amazon.com, briefly reaching the #1 spot on the family category. Now, I was really intrigued by what they had to say to social workers, or anyone who works with families. They were saying, do not forget about the mother-stepmother relationship. It is perhaps the most important relationship to address in a blended family. Well, their message has caught the attention of major media outlets like the Washington Post and most recently the Dr. Phil Show. And although my podcast with them is not yet ready for prime time, I wanted to give you a preview in advance of their appearance on the Dr. Phil Show, which is going to happen Tuesday, December 1st. In this 3-minute excerpt, Jennifer and Carol talk about some of the typical issues that the mother-stepmother relationship brings. Enjoy this preview and watch them on the Dr. Phil Show Tuesday, December 1st, and then check out the full story on the Social Work Podcast.
There are some totally predictable problems that you're going to see over and over again in this relationship. First off, traditionally it's fairly adversarial. You'll find that many women just feel totally blindsided by how hard it is to have this unwanted intruder in their life. I think it's a pretty confusing situation for most people, and sadly, the support that you'll tend to get from family and friends is in the form of demonizing the other woman, which people think is helping you, but it's not.
I totally agree with Jen. You're pretty much set up from the beginning, I think, on both sides to hate the other woman. For my part, when I first met David, my husband, I was in college and I was 21, and all my friends told me I was completely insane. They said, oh my God, you're marrying an older man, not only an older man, he's 13 years older than me, but a man with 2 kids and a lot of baggage and an ex-wife. And I actually lost a few of those friends when I got married because they just thought that my life was going to get too complicated or whatever, and I just really didn't hear from them again. But from that point on, the friends that I kept and the new friends that I made just completely supported me in hating Jen. They would hear about, the ex-wife and immediately just jump into, oh, that bitch, I can't believe she's doing that to you, and blah, blah, blah. I could meet strangers on the street who, if I were to talk about the ex-wife, they would roll their eyes and say, oh, God, that's always such a horrible thing to deal with.
I also think that, unfortunately, there's this kind of enemy mentality that usually kicks in from the very beginning. The father and his new wife are probably venting about the mom as the father justifies the ending of his marriage. The mother usually feels threatened because there's someone spilling all her personal secrets, and yet she has no one to tell her the stepmother's secrets to make things, quote, balanced. There are issues of money involved, and that's a core trigger for most people. And then you often have the legal system in the situation between the two women with language that tends to find someone at fault, creates legal expenses, and perhaps one side can't pay. It's just very volatile from the very beginning, and I think that tends to make people just really sort of dig in and prepare for a fight. And you often have these completely differing versions of reality. For instance, Carol and I, we have completely different versions of our first meeting. Carol's version, and I'll let her speak about this, happened in a totally different way than how I remember it.
So how does their first meeting turn out? Well, I'll have the full story on the complete podcast on mothers and stepmothers. Check back on the Social Work Podcast website, sign up for the Facebook page, or follow the Social Work Podcast on Twitter to find out when this episode is airing. We'll see you then. I'm Jonathan Singer, and thanks for being with me today for another episode of the Social Work Podcast. If you missed an episode or have suggestions for future episodes, please visit socialworkpodcast.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit our online store at cafepress.com/swpodcast. To all the social workers out there, keep up the good work. We'll see you next time at the Social Work Podcast.